All right. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Finance Committee. Sitting for the Finance Committee this evening will be myself as the chair, Councilor Gould, Councilor Manning Martin, Councilor McGinn, and Councilor Turco. I'd also like to recognize we have with us this evening as well Councilor Garabedian, Councilor Saslaw, and Councilor Charast. First item on the agenda this evening is the transfer of funds from the for the police department budget, with an explanation given to us by our finance director extraordinaire, Mr. Gingrich.
Thank you. I've worked with the chief, and we put together some projections for the need to close out the rest of the year. And due to overtime, officers being out, we're looking for a transfer from several funding sources. $50,250 from within the budget from expenses to salary, $337,050 from our budgeted reserve account, which would close that out, and $361,500 from free cash or unreserved fund balance. And the chief is here if there's any questions.
I have questions from the council. Councilor Manning Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under salaries, $225,000 in salaries were off. Well, salaries is kind of a known entity, so I want to know how we overshot the runway by so much. That's a significant amount of money to be short in salaries.
Councilor, part of that had to do with the Quinn bill option given to officers to roll the amount into their base pay. And when we initially set the budget last year, we didn't take that into consideration.
The Quinn bill, you didn't take that into consideration?
Well,
that's been around forever.
No, the new contract that they signed, they had the option to roll it into their base pay instead of getting a lump sum payment in December, which would be in the following fiscal year. And we did that in July or August. That's the contributing factor to that. Better? Yeah. Okay. In August, the police officers were given the option to roll Quinn bill into their base pay. So instead of making $30 an hour, they had a 20% or 25% increase, whatever their Quinn bill is. And that translated into a higher salary amount than they normally would have had. When we set the budget last June, we didn't anticipate that being rolled into their base pay. That's why we have the projected $200,000 deficit in salaries alone.
So this is just if I may, do I still have the floor, Mr. Chairman?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I was pointing.
I was trying to follow your direction. Do I still have the floor? You were pointing.
You do.
Thank you. Okay. So this isn't a statewide change in the Quinn bill. This is a contract that we entered into that allowed for that option.
Yes.
Is that what you're telling us?
That's correct. Yes.
And we didn't anticipate $225,000
No, we
in
didn't.
salaries with that option that we put on the table.
The people that chose that option didn't choose it until the beginning of this fiscal year. We didn't know who was going to take it and who wasn't going to take it.
Did you anticipate at all the option being taken, since it was an option put on the table for negotiations and you were in negotiations. That's a huge number to be off in salaries, $225,000.
Yeah, we didn't anticipate that.
So you didn't budget at all, any anticipation whatsoever for an option that was on the table in negotiations?
No, we did not.
And when were negotiations settled?
Not sure. In the spring, late spring.
And let's move on to dispatches. $115,000 in dispatches overtime. Are those officers? Are they civilians? Why is that number so large?
Those are civilians, and there's 2 officers that we're dealing with some lengthy sick time issues that we're backfilling for their spots for, and some of the replacement dispatchers that we try to bring in for per diem weren't quite up to snuff in terms of their training, so they weren't available to us, so we had to just go with the overtime to fill the slot when those people were out.
This is a lot of money, and I think you could have better judged and anticipated these things happening. This is a lot of money, and I think you really overshot the runway, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Gould.
Oh, yeah, I think the mayor would like to speak. I'll yield to the mayor if he's moving towards the microphone.
No, I just want to speak on behalf of the chief. It is impossible to predict what type of injuries are going to take place in a given year. And to question the chief on overshooting the runway when we have no idea how it's going to go year to year. We take our best guess every time we do the budget. We've been doing it for the last 6 years, and all the mayors before that do their best guess as to what the overtime budgets are going to yield. It's like the snow budget. We take our best guess, and then at the end of the year, in the end of the fiscal year, we come forward, try to make adjustments to work it out. This year was a significantly large amount of unfortunately, illnesses and injuries that required us to make adjustments. We're adding new police officers in the academy now. We think that'll help significantly, but it's impossible to predict, and every year this could happen. We come here to do the best we can, and to make comments that were, flip comments like that are just unfair to hardworking people that are just doing the best they can to try to account for injuries that take place on the job. Obviously, police officers, firefighters have jobs that place themselves in danger. They get injured. They deal with very difficult challenges every day, and we as a department, we as a city, try to accommodate those injuries and those needs as best we can. And the flip comments, I just don't think are warranted to our finance director and our police chief are just working very hard to try to do the right thing. We come to you to present the numbers. Here's the explanation. Here's what's happened. And we try to make the best decisions we can with the information we have at the time.
Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilor Martin.
Thank you. My job here as a city councilor is to review the requests that come before us, question them, and take a vote on them. If the mayor thinks that my doing that job is flip in any way, that's his opinion. And I don't appreciate his comments directed directly towards me. He doesn't like my comments that I'm making in the course of my duties as an elected official to represent 54,000 people in the city of Peabody.
Thank
so on
you.
that, I think
Thank you.
As
As a matter of fact, as the chair, I'll rule on that and say that you're both entitled to your opinion. It's a free forum. There's no restrictions on what you say. He can have his opinion on what you said. You can have your opinion on what he said. I don't think this is the forum for expressing opinions. It's you presented what you thought, he presented what he thought, and I'd like to move on to the facts behind this. Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, if you recall, there were 2 major centennial events.
That's correct, yes.
There was a lot of money spent on both the military band concert the night we had the microburst come through there, and we were very well prepared, but it did cost us a lot of money. And the parade, if you'd like to speak to those two.
That's correct. There were actually 2 nights for the fireworks that we had to provide security for, as well as the parade. That I believe the parade itself was over $18,000. That we needed to secure a very lengthy 3-mile parade. The fireworks obviously weren't as expensive, but I believe they were about $8,000 or $9,000.
Chief, as the chair of the Centennial Celebration, I have to tell you, your crew has been nothing but supportive and professional, and I would recommend the way you did it. We would do it again if we had to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Gingrich. With respect to the $225,000 that related to largely related to the Quinn bill, I guess, are we essentially looking at a pay ahead of a liability that we would have incurred in the next fiscal year? Is this essentially the same bucket of money that we would have otherwise incurred, just in a different period? Or is this incremental to our overall liability under this agreement?
You're essentially correct, because normally we would calculate what that amount would have been and then paid it at the end of November, beginning of December, the following fiscal year. So this crossed budgets and caught us a little bit off guard.
So is it, Mr. Chairman, through you, is it safe to say that although we're incurring it earlier than anticipated through the budget cycle, it doesn't represent a net increase into the overall liability of the city? Or is this, as a function of the new negotiated contract, is there something incremental that the city is going to incur going forward?
Well, there's some increase based on the increase in pay for the particular officer, but other than that, it's something that we would incur anyway.
But not related, relative to the percent increases, but not relative to this specific condition tied to the different means by which the Quinn bill money can be paid out, right? Is that accurate?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, Mr. McGinn. Councilor Sasla, you pass. Councilor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, Councilor McGinn already addressed most of my questions regarding the Quinn bill. But in addition to that, you had longevity, and I just wonder how you could be off on longevity, similar to the Councilor Manning Martin's questions. Aren't these set numbers? We know how long everybody's been there and what they're entitled to at the end of the year. So I'm just wondering how we're $7,000 off there.
We generally do a census and project based on that census. Without having it in front of me, I can't tell you exactly why it didn't match up.
Thank you, that's all.
Any further questions from members of the committee or other members present? There being none, what be the wish of the committee? Councilor Gould.
I'd like to make a motion to approve transfer of funds as recommended for the police department. So moved. Do you need me to go into the details of it, Mr. Chairman?
You have to at least go to the three big numbers. So the motion properly taken would be the from the police budget. You want to transfer 50,250 from the line items 5211, 52111, 52211, 52321, 53010, 53137, 53145, 53420, 54110. 54213, 57340, to the overtime budget, 51,130, and then as a part of that motion, you also would take from the budgeted reserve 57,410 in the amount of $337,000.50 and apply it to 51,110 salaries in the amount of 225,000 and 51,130 overtime in the amount of 112,050. And then likewise, you would transfer from the unreserved fund balance 35,901 in the amount of 361,500 to the police budget in the amount to account 51,130 for overtime in the amount of 153,700, 51,136 drug overtime in the amount of 115,000, and dispatch overtime in the amount of 92,800. And that is your motion.
As you very ably did, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to transfer those funds as recommended. So moved.
On the motion, any further comments on the motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilors Manning Martin,
Present.
Turco,
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0, 1 voting present.
Next item on the agenda is the transfer of funds for the fire department budget. Mr. Gingrich.
Again, this is a similar request from the fire chief to transfer $692,000 out of unreserved fund balance to overtime to cover his extended sick leave for 14 firefighters, some major fires that they had to contend with, and other issues during that time. This should take us out through June 30th.
Council Manning Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for career incentive, the increase, or they were only off, actually, $2,820. And actually, they were
Under.
over, or under.
Right.
They were under $2,800 for career incentive. So they're not asking for any increase in career incentive. And the backfill was overtime on a supervisory position that they now needed to fill in order to put a lieutenant in each firehouse. Is that correct? When those men or women are sick, they need to backfill those positions contractually. Is that correct? That covers for the overtime?
Part of the cost, yes.
Thank you very much. And they had 23 building fires and many mutual aid throughout the city, incurring a lot of overtime, which is understandable. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. Other councilors? Councilor Sasslaw.
Thank you. My question, Mike, is between this budgetary item and the one was just voted on. So are we now looking at taking over $1 million out of free cash, and we started off the night with 12.6, and now we'll be down about 11.5 going into this year's budget?
That's correct.
Okay, just want to be clear about that. Thank you.
Mike, the total budget that last year was 154 million?
59, I believe.
159. So that's roughly 8% increase to the total budget this year. So, are these going to be reflective next year in next year's budget? Is this going to be the anticipation?
We're starting to go through that now. We're going to take a look at that, but then we always try not to be too aggressive if we put in a large amount for overtime and raise that money through taxation. You know, for every $1 million, it's $40 on the tax rate, so we're trying to balance that.
And I guess we're thankful that we have the reserves available to do this. Any further questions from the council? Councilor Turco.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, I just wanted to ask you very quickly about the positions. In order to prevent this from happening next year, I know you had mentioned in a previous meeting that there was going to be some hiring for police and fire. Is that still in the works? Are we behind in positions?
There's three areas of finances, city finances, that are near impossible to predict. One is snow budget, the dealing with the winter storms. Second is special education, and third is police and fire overtime, because you just never know what's going to take place, and you hope for the best every year. This year, we have added, right now for the police department, we have 3 police officers in the academy. Right now, they're in the Reading Academy. They started in March. They'll be coming out this summer, and we believe that that'll help next year's budget in dealing with some of the overtime issues that we've had. Firefighters, we're looking to add up to 5 firefighters this coming summer. We just called for the list, and we're beginning that process now. Right now, we do not have, the reserve list for fire has been exhausted. So we've asked for the list to come in. There'll be some firefighters that potentially will go on right away, and then there'll also be, we'll be creating a reserve list. It's interesting now with police and fire, I believe, when they're on reserve lists now, that's time they're accruing towards their pension. So things have to be looked at a little differently. But right now we have 3 police officers in the academy. They'll be coming on the streets this summer, and then we're going to be hiring probably sometime during the summer. The chief is hoping for earlier than that, but we have to go through the civil service process. We're looking at about 5 firefighters.
It's great news. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I just want to make one correction for, in case the press was recording, and for Allison, I missed a decimal point. It's not 8%, it's 0.008. It's less than 1%. Thank you. Councilman McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for correcting that math. Mr. Mayor, through you to the mayor, maybe you have this at your disposal, maybe you don't. I know the chief isn't here this evening, but do you have any sense of how much of the total overtime is driven by the 14 firefighters that are on extended sick leave? Do you know what percentage of the total?
No, I do not, but I can certainly get that information. But really, the one that affected us greatly as well, there were this year there were a number of fires. I think all of you are familiar with them. But the one that was significant that cost us a great deal was the one on Fifth Avenue, when it needed 24-hour, and it went on for weeks. That was a significant fire that contributed greatly to these numbers. But I can certainly get you a breakdown of percentages as to which one was for for overtime costs to replace the firefighters that were out for a period of time, as opposed to the fires themselves.
Yeah, thank you. I think that'd be useful information. I mean, I don't recall in prior years seeing anything that, 14 seems like a very significant number. I see the Director of Finance nodding in agreement.
Yeah,
maybe he could comment on this. I mean, this seems like a real outlier in terms of, bad luck, I guess. I'm not sure how you anticipate that, but is the issue or the reserve, the call-up that was the question that you responded to from Councilor Turco, do you see that helping to work this number down going forward in the immediate future?
I do. I think doing that is going to help tremendously. This year was an outlier. It was by far the biggest one that I presented to you. And it's unfortunate, because I know the firefighters and the police officers have been out. They desperately want to be back. It's something we have to meet on every month to review the injuries in the indemnification board. And I know it's just an unfortunate thing. But in these positions, they're putting themselves at risk. Police officers and firefighters, they deserve respect for what they do. But this is a consequence of just the challenges and risks that they have to take for their job. So we have to make adjustments. We think adding those some additional firefighters and police officers to the ranks will assist in that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any further comments or questions? I just have one, Mike, and these kind of represent two relatively large transfers. Do we have anything on the horizon that we expect in other areas like the school budget where we'd be requesting large transfers from the reserves?
I don't believe the school budget will be anything significant, if there is any. We're still trying to deal with the snow and ice issue right now, and we may come back for that one, and then year-end closeout.
All right. If there's no further questions, I'll entertain the motion. A motion by Council Gould.
I'd like to make a motion to transfer from unreserved fund balance account number 35901 in the amount of $692,000 to the fire budget, account number 51130 overtime budget in the amount of $692,000. So moved.
On the motion, any discussion? Seeing none.
Yeah, thank you.
Roll call.
'Cause I
Councilors
dabbled.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Last item on the agenda is an update regarding the finances of the city, general obligation bonds, and our bond rating. Mr. Gingrich.
Yeah, this package is a general update on our bond sale that we had in March. We sold $10 million in 20-year bonds for the Higgins School, which brings us to $39,750,000 bonded for the Higgins School to date. In addition to that, we took out short-term notes for a year, $7.3 million for the Higgins, and let's see, $2 million for the Square, and $1.5 million for the high school roof.
Questions on behalf of the committee? So what's the perspective here? That everything still looks good from our bond rating? Is that what you're saying?
Our bond rating came in, and they affirmed it, but they gave us a warning that we've tapped into our reserves to the point where they may look at a downgrade.
And the current interest rate is still best in class in terms of what's out there?
Yeah, in fact, our coupon rate, average coupon on these bonds was lower than last year. We were 4% last year, and we're 3.235 this year.
Well, that part's good news. So, little concerned about the warning, but then again, bond ratings are only good if you're not using the money. So, as long as the money's being used for good things, I think that's the important part. I don't think there's any motion to be taken, just a report of progress. So, Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Gingrich, for the update. This typically comes up at budget time, but maybe put in the request now. There are, as part of the budget package, there's always a comparison to other communities in terms of where they are with tax rate. I think there's been curiosity amongst the council in the past in terms of where the city stacks up with respect to bond rating as well. So is that information that you have easy access to, or relatively easy access to, in terms of comparative to, say other communities in Essex County?
Well, what I've gotten in the past, and I could see if I can get it again, is we're a AA1, and all of the AA1 communities in Massachusetts, I can get that comparison to see the different percentages of reserves and wealth factors and things of that nature.
I think any information along those lines that would show how we stack up relative to other communities and the factors that play into it would be appreciated and useful to me. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other further comments? Being none, I'll accept the motion to adjourn. So moved.